So I'm going to work with Rob Capellini here. We're going to do something which fits the topic of this conference, but is a lot simpler than what you've seen. You've seen a lot of pretty high tech, some really heavy duty research topics, but I don't think we need to go that far in order to say something really interesting. And that's kind of what we want to do today. We want to talk about sort of how we can use all the tools that we've got already on our phone and our laptops and make them serve the kinds of functions that are important for risk management. So we're calling this risk management strategy. And basically, this is quite consistent with the way we think about VLab. Let's maybe have the next slide.
Gotcha.
I've got it right here.
Okay.
Yeah. Oops. I don't know whether AI is going to help this one at all. I think somebody must have slipped that one in while I wasn't paying attention. This is the one I guess we need to go to. So
Did you win the championship there?
we didn't lose, well, but I mean, so when at VLab, at the VRI, we've always been interested in risk, and we keep focusing on the idea that there are many different ways to measure risk in many different places. We've developed studies over the years, conferences over the years, and we've added many and many of these tools and measurements to VLab. So we have a wonderful website, which many of you have heard us talk about before, and which many of you know about, managed by Rob Capellini and the other Rob.
The other Rob, that's me, affectionately titled at the Volatility and Risk Institute. Yeah.
And we do all these things. And we have volatilities, correlation, systemic risk, illiquidity, long-run value at risk, climate risk, and COVOL. We have data here, which is updated daily as financial markets all over the world close. And we think it should be useful for all of us in one way or another to measure and assess risks. It's a little complicated and maybe over the top in terms of how much information is in there. And so one of the things that I want you to hear about today is a way to use this without needing to really go through the whole thing. And what we're going to do is ask sort of simple questions and then see if we can use AI to get us the answer. So maybe I should tell you at least a little bit about one of the new features in here, because we're going to use it, which is we have a model called COVOL, and it stands for common volatility. And maybe I should go to the next slide. No, okay. So COVOL is basically measuring the errors in volatility forecasts. Because volatility, we forecast every day for 10,000 assets across countries, across asset classes, and so forth. And every single volatility forecast has an error in it. The actual realized volatility is different from what we predicted. No surprise there. Sometimes it's bigger, sometimes it's smaller. But what we've observed is often when the volatility, that the markets actually move more than was predicted by our forecast, it's not just for one asset that happens. It's for many assets at the same time. many countries at the same time, many asset classes at the same time. And so there is some systematic thing that's going on that we try to capture with this COVOL. That is, we create a factor, which is a multiplicative factor that tells you that on this day, that if you multiply the volatility that you predicted by a factor, you get something which is closer to what really occurred. And that factor is measured by how common it is across all the assets in this particular sector. So we call that COVOL, and we've done it for countries. We've done it for asset classes within the US. We've done it for oil and gas stocks all over the world. And one of the things we've seen recently is that commodities have very interesting co-movements as well. And so we've now added a new one, which is commodities. So now there are 4 of these in VLab, adding to the richness, but the complexity also of this. So while we put in the 4th one, we also have a lot of ways of consolidating them. We have a systematic COVOL, which is really the principal component of all 4 of these measures of forecast errors. We have now recognized that because this is like a forecasting error in volatility, sometimes it doesn't show up. When volatilities are all forecasted to be really high, then COVOL doesn't show up as a very big forecast error. So interestingly, for example, the recent spike in volatilities doesn't show up in COVOL. Even the commodities or the oil and gas stocks aren't really misforecast by their underlying assets. And so the COVOL part doesn't look so big, but that's because the volatility is high. So we've now said, okay, so let's calculate the volatility corrected for COVOL. And that's what we call COVOL adjusted volatility. And we take a version of that, we aggregate across the sectors. So these are ways of trying to talk about risk globally and across asset classes, and sort of big pictures of risk, not risk of a stock, not risk of a sector, but things that really drive everything. And one of the questions is when we're trying to do risk management and we look in silos, are we missing this sort of thing? And that's what we're trying to get at today. So here are the COVOL adjusted volatilities, and you can see that these 4 curves on here are all jumping around a lot. They all spiked up during the tariff liberation day, but we're not seeing a lot of action here in the period where we are now, and that's just what the markets are doing. The markets are not showing us a lot of action here, even when we've included the volatilities into these measures. Okay, so what we want to do is something that you've probably all done. You've probably asked your local LLM where it says, ask anything, and you say, okay, tell me what the volatility is for oil today. And what it tends to tell you is, well, you can find that out if you go to VLab and look at and scroll down to this, you'll find it. But we didn't want that. We wanted to look at VLab and get a number. And this is where Rob came in. He said, we know how to do this. We can create an MCP, a Model Context Protocol, which is a program that
You want me to talk about it, Rob? I can talk about MCP all day.
you're ready to go.
Let's
Okay.
do this.
Why don't you tell what it does,
Sure.
why it's such a cool thing?
A model context protocol was a protocol first fielded by Anthropic in, I believe, 2024. And it's a protocol which formalizes the communication between an LLM and a data or service provider. So if you've ever tried to use these non-deterministic language models and do something very deterministic, like just give me this data series, sometimes it doesn't do as good of a job as it should. So this model context protocol is a means that formalizes that communication. It allows servers to talk to your LLM and provide you with tools to run on the data, resources, which are data files themselves, and prompts, which are sort of templates or workflows that you could do with the data source in question. So that's MCP in a nutshell. So we have a VLab MCP now that it currently just exposes tools. We're working on resources and templates as well. But all you do is, I mean, the hardest part, ironically, is configuring it. But there's a flyer that each of you have with a link to VLab, a page in VLab, which tells you per LLM how you connect the VLab MCP to your large language model. So I encourage you all to take a look, with full disclosure that I fielded that page into production as I was descending into Grand Central Terminal this morning. So I didn't necessarily have time to check every single LLM to make sure it works. So if you follow the instructions and it doesn't work, the first thing I would encourage you to do is tell your LLM it doesn't work. Then your LLM will say, oh, right, you should do this instead. Then do that, watch it work, and then say, hey, Rob Capellini, this needs to change. By the way, there's a tool in the MCP to provide feedback directly to me. So I tried to put it in the flyer ad nauseum, so it's mentioned in several places. Please use the MCP. Please give me feedback. If you don't want to give me feedback via the MCP, email me, come to my office, say hi, let's talk. So.
Okay, so let's see what we can do with this now. Okay, so is it going to be a bad week next week? Today's Friday. What we want is a measure that we can see today, which gives you an idea what the risk is of different asset classes next week. And we're going to use historical data to see what the indicators are today that would tell you that. So we're going to look at the S&P, NASDAQ, ACWI, the international index, IEF, which is a treasury index for 7 to 10 year treasuries, and a dollar index. So we're going to look at how we might expect their performance to be next week based on measures that we see today. And what are the measures we're going to be interested in? Well, obviously, we're going to be interested in volatility. That's a way of measuring value at risk. It's the same, it's almost the same calculation, but also things like the VIX and the asset class COVOL, which we just talked about, and the composite COVOL, which we just talked about, or actually called it systemic COVOL.
Missed that.
Which we're just doing this naming thing.
Naming is hard. Naming things
And
is
then
yeah.
Another one, which is a measure of how widespread the risk is, which we call the fraction red. And probably if you've ever gone to VLab, you'll know what I'm talking about, which is we have a map like this. That's the first thing you see when you go to the web page, and every country is color-coded by how high its volatility is. And basically, this is typically an equity volatility, but sometimes it includes fixed income and currency volatilities as well. So it's a measure of how risky this country is. And when it's red, it's high. And when it's green, it's low. And as you can see, there are a lot of countries with high volatility now. But sometimes it's even redder than that. And so this measure is what fraction of the countries actually are red at this point in time. And when that gets up to be something like close to 100%, the financial markets are kind of on fire. And the question is that kind of a useful measure in figuring out what you can expect to become? Okay, so currently today it's at 42%. So it's less than half of them are red. So what we decided to do, first of all, was to look at the 10 worst weeks over the last 25 years of each of these 5 indices. And here are the dates of the 10 worst weeks for the S&P, the 10 worst weeks for NASDAQ, ACWI, bonds, and currencies. And across each row, we've color-coded for the 5 measures of risk that we're interested in. The volatility, the VIX, the GARCH volatility, the VIX, the
Asset class COVOL,
the composite
Composite
COVOL,
COVOL.
and the fraction red.
Yeah.
So you can see October, what's that, 18th?
I think it's October 10th,
October 10th?
93.
93, all right. They're all 5 of them bright red, indicating that all these indicators say that the risk is high now, and we might therefore not be surprised if it's a high risk measure for next week. But if you look down the column down there, they're not all like that. All these top 10 weeks, most of them have a lot of dark red there, but not all of them. And if you go across here, you see that in most cases, a lot of these risk measures are elevated when this is a high risk week, but not all of them. And there are some weeks there, like February 28th, 2020, where there are no deep red ones at all. And that's sort of before, just kind of 2 weeks before COVID hit. And really, we weren't paying much attention to it, I guess, or markets weren't. All right, so this is the first look at it. But then Claude, which is what we were working with, said, let's go. This is not enough. Let's see what we can do. And so it ran some regressions looking at how returns depended on these risk characteristics for each of these sectors. It did a pool for the events which were already identified. We look, in this case, I guess what's here are looking at 50 worst weeks for each of these 5 assets. That gives 250 observations. And we look at, for those 250 observations, what was the return as a function of the characteristics? But then we also wondered, what's the probability that next week is going to be one of these 50 worst weeks, or one of the 10 worst weeks for each asset? So there is a logit model here estimated, which is estimating the probability that you'll be in the tail next week. So this is a question of whether it will be a bad week. And these two are sort of saying, how extreme is it likely to be? There are the returns, what are the returns? And well, Claude runs a lot of things and produces, how long was that report that it produced
About
for you?
20 pages. or
About
so.
20 pages of stuff. And so here are a couple of pages that came from it. So it says, if you do this logit model with the worst 50 weeks, and then you redo it with the worst 10 weeks, you actually get a pretty good improvement in actually how good the fit is, just having the 10 worst weeks. The AUC, the area under the curve, goes from 0.74 to 0.85, which is a kind of a way of thinking that it actually does a better job of picking out the worst weeks. These bottom two curves sort of show for different levels of the probability how much you're getting, and this is the curve which reflects whether you're picking out the worst cases. Ideally, it would be just I think an L shape there. Another way of looking at it is to look at each of these.
Very difficult.
I'm sure you can read the stuff because I can't read it from here. But the first box is all for the full sample OS. The second one is looking at the worst weeks, and the third box is looking at the probit models. And a lot of these things are significant, not all of them. And there's a lot of information here, but I'm not really going to look at it in too much detail because this is what, 2 hours of work or something like that we did it. You'd think it would take a semester or something like that of a good RA to come up with models like this, but with this MCP working with your favorite LLM, you can do just simple conjectures really quickly. So what are the takeaways? Composite metrics do help predict the tails. That there's a lot of evidence in those pages that tells you that when you want to know the risk of the S&P, it helps to know what's going on in the rest of the world. It helps to know what's going on in other asset classes. When the AI, or at least Claude anyway, keeps talking about, oh, you've got this great T statistic. Oh, this is really good. Oh, it's very enthusiastic. It's probably overfitting. And so one of the important things, I think, is to be careful and use conventional, perhaps, or maybe other more exotic tools to figure out whether you really are comfortable with these results. And, econometricians have developed a lot of intuition and a lot of tools for looking at different models. And Claude can give you these models so fast that you can really do all your robustness studies that you would often take weeks to do pretty easily. And you should feel free to do those things, I think, because as I say, if you take Claude's word for it, you'll think that you've got the best model in the world, where it's just a good starting point. And I think that's the third point. It is just scratching the surface, and it just means so much is possible, and that you can do it on your computer and at home. The VLab is a free website, and you just have to put in these little commands to link it to your large language model that you've got, and you can do this or anything else. And so this is just more of an illustration of what the possibilities are than it's saying this is the model. Anything you want to add?
Just as having maintained VLab for 15 years, the friction is always in the interface. So you folks want things from VLab, and I don't necessarily know what that is, but I try to do my best by designing the interface to get you that data. Now we have this conversational interface, this semi-intelligent interface that you can explain what you want, and then it can dissect the back end and figure out how to grab it using the model context protocol server. So it's kind of a dream right now. I finally have the interface that I've been looking for, and I hope it works for you.
Thank you.